Ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of elderly people out here working, probably more than I've ever seen in my lifetime. When I was coming up, it was not very often that you saw a lot of old people on the job like you do today. You see far more today. This came out in the LA Times. News analysis: more older Americans are on the job and more are dying there too. So, the biggest fatalities on the job are now these elderly people. US workplaces have gotten a lot safer over the past century. In 1913, the Bureau of Labor Statistics estimated that there were 23,000 industrial deaths, or 61 for every 100,000 workers. In 2018, that number of what are now called occupational fatalities was 5,250, according to the BLS survey, much more exhaustive than its 1913 precursor, or 3.5 for every 100,000 full time equivalent workers. But those 5,250 deaths were an increase over the 5,147 in 2017. And workplace fatalities have been up for 6 of the last 9 years. The number of workplace injuries and deaths tend to fall during recessions because there are fewer workers to get hurt, and because high risk industries such as construction and trucking are often hit hardest by job loss. Some increase in fatality was thus to be expected as the economy recovered in recent years, and the current number of rate of fatalities remain below the levels that prevailed before the last recession. There was, however, something unusual going on in 2006: a housing bubble that pushed the fatality prone construction sector to its highest share of non farm employment since 1956. That makes the drop afterwards less impressive, and the subsequent failure of the fatality rate to keep falling the bigger story. All right, so they're saying there are more people over the age of 55 in the workplace today, which I know is true because I actually see that when I go out. It is also possible to identify a major force that has been keeping the rate from falling. The workforce is not necessarily evil, but as a 56-year-old, I do find it kind of creepy. More people older than 55 are working, and people over 55 are likely to die on the job than younger workers. The rise of the older worker is partly just demographics. The giant baby boom generation, as defined by the Census Bureau, ranges in age from 55 to 74. But it's also because older Americans, especially much older Americans, are far more likely to be part of the labor force now than they were back in the 1970s through the 1990s. Among those 65 and older, the labor force participation rate has risen from a low of 10.4% in 1985 to 20.3% now. Among those 75 and older, it has gone from 4% to 9.7%. Well, we certainly see that in Congress. I really think the average age is in the 70s. Older Americans are likelier to be working now for a variety of reasons. Some seem entirely positive. Americans are living significantly longer than they did a few decades ago, for example, and once common mandatory retirement rules have largely disappeared since Congress banned most of them in 1986. Okay, now that explains why we got all these over the hill Congress people because you can't really push them out anymore. A more complicated issue is the changing nature of retirement income. Some Americans work into their 70s because they have no retirement savings, while others have savings but work longer because the defined contribution plans that now predominate reward delayed retirement in ways that most traditional pensions do not. In any case, as the share of older workers have grown, the share of workplace deaths that they account for has grown too. Wow. So my question is it worth it? You're working until you literally drop dead on the job. Is it really worth it? Wow. It is not that the workplace has been getting more dangerous over time for older workers. Every age group has seen declines in workplace fatalities rates since 2006. And the decline for those 65 and older has been the biggest. The 65 plusers share of workplace has grown by 3% points just since 2006, and their occupational fatality rates remain much, much higher than anybody else's. 10.3 per 100,000 full-time workers in 2018 versus 3.5 for the workforce overall and 4.6 for those age 55 through 64. Hmm. Being older obviously makes one more prone to kill over, but the occupational fatality statistics don't include on the job deaths due to natural causes. So, what explains the higher death rates for older workers? In an analysis published last month, BLS economists Sean M. Smith and Stephen M. Pegla um, attempted to answer that question. To get statistically meaningful results, they generally focus on the entire 55 plus age group, not the smaller but much higher risk group of workers, 65 and older, and the combined data for a number of years. One thing they found was that those 55 and older were more likely than younger workers to die of lingering injuries, sometimes weeks, months, or even years after a workplace accident. Older people are more fragile than younger ones. So they are more likely to suffer certain injuries, hip fractures, for example, and have more trouble recovering than their younger peers. The biggest cause of workplace fatalities for both older and younger workers is traffic accidents. Okay, well, yeah, that makes sense. So they're saying those traffic accidents accounted for a quarter of the deaths from 2011 through 2017 among those under 55 and among those 55 and older. So no disparities here. Hmm. So, ladies and gentlemen, I guess if you like to work, then the longer you stay out there working, then you're risking dying on the job. So, I guess you have a choice. You can retire and try to enjoy yourself, but I know some people are just financially are not in that kind of situation where they can just go somewhere and sit down. They have to work, you know, especially if they can't make ends meet on what they get on a monthly basis. But I have to tell you, I do see that around here. When I go into especially retail stores or even if you go past a fast food restaurant, you may see some older person standing there working the drive-through, you know? Or I have even gone to the doctor's office, and one time when I was in there, I saw an older lady filing, you know? So you do see them a lot more out there. So as you see more and more elderly people out here working, just know the fatalities on the jobs are also going up as well. But y'all, please tell me what you think. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.